I always thought betrayal was something that happened to other people. You read about it in magazines, hear whispers about it at parties, maybe watch a movie that dramatizes it. But you never think it's going to be your story. My story began on what should have been the happiest day of my life, my wedding day. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains of the small hotel suite where my best man and I had stayed the night before. Everything was perfect, down to the smallest detail. The tuxedo hung neatly on the wardrobe door, the rings were tucked safely in their velvet box, and the air was filled with that nervous excitement that comes before life-changing moments. But looking back now, I realize that sometimes perfection is nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion. I remember pacing the floor, my palms sweating despite the cool air conditioning. My best man, Eric, sat casually on the couch, scrolling through his phone, trying to lighten the mood with small jokes. "Relax," he said with a grin. "You're about to marry the girl of your dreams. Nothing to worry about." At that time, he was right. Or at least, I believed he was. The hours ticked by, and finally, it was time. Guests were already seated in the decorated hall downstairs. The music was softly playing, and every detail seemed like something out of a fairy tale. I caught glimpses of family members, friends, colleagues, all gathered to witness this once-in-a-lifetime event. As I stood near the altar, waiting for her to walk down the aisle, I thought about our story. How we'd met 3 years earlier at a mutual friend's birthday party. How we spent hours talking that first night, ignoring everyone else. How she laughed at my stupid jokes, and how I knew, in that moment, that she was different from anyone I had ever met. She was my anchor, my safe place, my everything. When the doors opened and she appeared, radiant in her white dress, I felt a lump in my throat. My heart raced. The room seemed to fade away, and it was just the two of us. She smiled as she walked down the aisle, her eyes locked on mine. It was the happiest moment of my life. But then, something small, almost invisible, caught my attention. Her maid of honor, her closest friend, Melissa, was walking just behind her, holding her train. For a second, their eyes met, and there was something there. A flicker. A flash of something I couldn't quite put into words. Not just friendship, not just nerves. Something else. It was gone almost instantly, but it planted a seed of doubt. The ceremony continued. We exchanged vows, slipped rings onto each other's fingers, kissed to the applause of everyone we loved. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and for all intents and purposes, it was perfect. Yet that seed of doubt grew quietly in the back of my mind. The reception was a blur of laughter, dancing, and champagne. I shook hands, accepted congratulations, and posed for countless photos. She looked stunning, her smile lighting up the room. And yet, I couldn't ignore the way she kept glancing toward Melissa. Quick, subtle looks, almost like unspoken conversations. By midnight, when most of the older guests had gone home, the younger crowd filled the dance floor. Music thumped, drinks flowed, and the air was electric with celebration. But I was no longer celebrating. I was observing, watching. Every interaction between my new wife and her maid of honor seemed too familiar, too charged. And then came the moment that shattered everything. I had stepped outside for some fresh air, trying to clear my head. The hotel's garden was quiet, lit only by fairy lights strung along the hedges. I was about to head back in when I heard voices. Familiar voices. Her voice. Melissa's voice. Curiosity, or maybe instinct, made me stop. I followed the sound around the corner, staying hidden in the shadows. And then I saw them. My wife. My new wife. In her wedding dress, standing close to Melissa. Too close. Their hands touched. Their faces were inches apart. And then, before I could even process what was happening, they kissed. My stomach dropped. The world tilted. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would explode. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just nerves or excitement. This was betrayal. On our wedding night, I stumbled backward, my foot crunching on a piece of gravel. They both froze, their heads snapping in my direction. Our eyes met. Hers widened in shock, Melissa's filled with something like fear. "Wait," she started, stepping forward. But I couldn't hear her. My ears were ringing, my chest tight. Without another word, I turned and walked away. The rest of the night is a blur. I remember going back to the reception, plastering on a fake smile, pretending everything was fine. I couldn't tell anyone, not yet. I didn't even know what to think. But one thing was certain. My marriage had ended before it had even begun. I didn't sleep that night. I went back to our suite, not because I wanted to be near her, but because I had nowhere else to go. The bed was made with crisp white sheets, the kind you imagine spending your honeymoon in, but I didn't even look at it. I sat in the chair by the window, stared at the skyline, and tried to make sense of what I had seen. There are moments that carve into your soul. Watching the person you just married kiss someone else, someone they swore was just a friend, is one of them. I thought I would cry or scream, but I didn't. I felt numb, hollow, as if someone had scooped out everything I had once believed in and left behind a body going through the motions. In the morning, she walked in quietly, still in her wedding dress, the hem dirted, the makeup smudged around her eyes. She looked like the ghost of the girl I had loved. "I need to explain," she said. I didn't respond. Not with words. I just looked at her, and that silence said everything. She stepped further in, cautious, like she was afraid I'd lash out. "It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake." My jaw clenched. "You kissed someone else. On our wedding night. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." She swallowed hard. "Melissa and we had history. Before you and I met. It was complicated. You should have told me. I thought it was over. But it's not, is it?" She said nothing. And there it was, the truth I had suspected all along. "You used me," I said bitterly, "to pretend you were someone else. To feel normal. To hide what you really wanted." "No," she cried, her voice cracking. "I love you. I really do. But part of me—" I stood up. "No. Stop. I don't want to hear about parts of you. I married all of you. And clearly, I never really had you." The next few days were a hurricane. Word spread fast, faster than I thought possible. Somehow, one of the hotel staff had seen something or said something, and soon, the whispers turned to noise. Families started asking questions. Friends stopped calling. Melissa disappeared. She quit her job and vanished from social media entirely. But my wife, or rather, the woman who had worn a white dress and promised me forever, stayed. She stayed in the apartment. She tried to cook breakfast. She left little notes. She apologized so many times that the word lost all meaning. And every time she looked at me, I saw guilt, but never regret. That's what hurt the most. Because she wasn't sorry for kissing Melissa. She was sorry I saw it. One night, maybe a week later, I found myself staring at our wedding album. We hadn't even posted anything online yet. The photos were stunning, the smiles, the lighting, the illusion. It all looked perfect. But now, every photo was a lie. A snapshot of a fantasy that never really existed. There was one shot, though, that made me freeze. It wasn't one I remembered posing for. We were outside, in the garden, just after the ceremony. I had my arms around her. She was smiling up at me. But in the background, barely visible, was Melissa, watching us. And she wasn't smiling. I zoomed in. The expression on her face, it wasn't jealousy. It was fear. Fear that I'd already figured it out. Or maybe fear that I would. That was the moment I decided I couldn't let this go quietly. I started digging. Not out of spite, but because I needed answers. Real answers. I checked phone records, messages, emails. I found a hidden folder on her laptop. It wasn't password protected, maybe because she never expected I'd look. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Her and Melissa. Vacations. Dinners. A weekend in Paris. Just 6 months before our wedding. She had lied to me from the start. I felt sick. But more than that, I felt stupid. Humiliated. I had stood in front of hundreds of people and vowed to love someone who had never been honest with me. And now I was left to deal with the fallout while she tried to move forward. No. She didn't get to move forward. Not yet. I made a plan. It wasn't about revenge, at least, that's what I told myself. It was about truth. If she wanted to live a lie, I wasn't going to be part of it anymore. But I wasn't going to disappear quietly either. We were invited to a post-wedding family dinner. A gathering to celebrate the newlyweds. Organized by her parents, who had no idea anything had happened. She begged me not to go. Said it would make things worse. That only made me more determined. I showed up wearing the same suit I wore at the wedding. She looked startled when I walked in. Her parents smiled. People clapped. There were speeches planned. I let them speak. And then I stood up. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I began, my voice steady. It means a lot to be surrounded by family and friends who care about us. My wife's eyes were wide. She shook her head, silently begging me to stop. I didn't. I just want to share something special, I continued. Something I recently discovered. Something that changed everything for me. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a printed photo, one from the hidden folder. Gasps filled the room. Her father stood up. What is this? I looked at my wife. It's the truth. She ran out in tears. I didn't follow. After that night, everything crumbled. She didn't come home. I wasn't sure where she went. Maybe to a friend's, maybe to her parents. I didn't ask. I didn't care. What mattered was that the truth was finally out. That perfect little image she had tried to protect had been shattered, not by my hand, but by her own decisions. I expected to feel vindicated, strong, in control. But I didn't. Instead, there was this strange hollowness. Like standing in the middle of a battlefield after the dust has settled, surrounded by the wreckage, wondering what the point of the war had even been. Friends started reaching out, one by one. Some offered support. Others offered silence. A few admitted that always felt something was off about her friendship with Melissa, but never wanted to say anything. A cousin even mentioned she'd seen them holding hands once, months ago, but assumed it was just emotional girl stuff. How convenient. It's funny how people become brave only after it's over. 2 weeks passed in a haze. I filed for annulment. The marriage had been legal, sure, but morally, it had died the second I saw them kiss. My lawyer handled everything. She didn't contest it. She didn't fight. That told me more than words ever could. But then something strange happened. Melissa reached out. Not with an apology, not even close. She emailed me. Just one sentence. You exposed the wrong person. At first, I didn't understand. What did that mean? How could there be someone worse than the woman who lied to me for 3 years? I didn't respond. But the message sat in my inbox, festering. That's when I started to dig again. I called in a favor from an old college friend, someone who worked in IT security. I asked him to trace the email. I told him it was about harassment. He agreed, hesitantly. What he found made my blood run cold. The email didn't come from Melissa's account. Not directly. It had been spoofed, masked to look like her, but sent through a third-party app. Who would go through that much trouble? Only someone who had something even deeper to hide. I confronted my ex-wife. She came to the apartment to pick up her things. She looked different, thinner, worn down, drained of her usual shine. She didn't even make eye contact. "Why did you do it?" I asked quietly. She paused. "You mean the kiss?" "No," I said. "I mean the email. The message pretending to be from Melissa." Her eyes widened. I saw it, the flicker of recognition. And then the panic. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," I replied calmly. "You used her name to shift the blame, to make me chase a new target. You wanted me distracted." "But why?" She hesitated. Her voice cracked. "Because you weren't supposed to find the second folder." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What folder?" She dropped her bag. It hit the floor with a dull thud. "There was more," she whispered. "More than just Melissa. It wasn't serious. I was confused. I thought I loved you, but part of me wasn't sure. I needed something else. Something more." I stared at her. "How many?" She didn't answer. That was the answer. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I just walked out. Left her there, alone, in the wreckage of the life she had burned down. I walked through the streets, the cold air biting at my face, and I felt something strange. Not sadness. Not even anger. Relief. Because finally, I had nothing left to lose. 6 months later, I was rebuilding. New apartment. New job. New number. I started therapy. Something I had always brushed off before. I stopped looking at wedding photos. I stopped searching for answers that wouldn't change anything. One afternoon, I was sitting at a cafe when someone tapped my shoulder. Melissa. She looked different, healthier, softer. We hadn't spoken since the wedding. She asked if she could sit. I nodded. "I didn't know you were going to do that," she said. "I figured. I was mad at first," she admitted. "But I get it now. She broke both of us." We sat in silence for a moment. "I didn't send that email," she added. "I know." Another pause. "Do you hate her?" she asked. I thought for a long time before answering. "No," I said. "But I don't respect her. And I don't miss her." She smiled faintly. "Good." Before she left, Melissa handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photo, one I'd never seen before. It was from the wedding. But in this one, I was standing alone, looking off into the distance, while she and my ex-wife laughed behind me. Not at me, but around me, as if I wasn't even part of the picture. "This is what it looked like the whole time," she said. "We just didn't know it yet." She left, and I finally understood something. Sometimes, the worst betrayal doesn't come from lies. It comes from someone convincing you that their love was real, when it never really existed at all. But here's the truth. I didn't lose a wife that day. I lost an illusion. And I gained something far more important: clarity.